The second etude for the middle school All-State Audition is Wolfart number 28 in Book 2. This piece is in G minor, and one of the things you have to think about in G minor is to make sure that your flats are flat enough. In other words, your B flats need to definitely be low. B flat is what tells us we are in the key of G minor. So if they're too sharp, you're going to sound like the key of G major, and it's going to really throw everything off. So your B flats, your E flats, and your A flats need to be nice and low. This is a really good excerpt for practicing intonation. It's a lot of third position, first position, second position, I think a little bit. Your shifts need to be clean and clear. We don't want any swooping sounds. So I would suggest isolating the shifts and practicing them. And by isolating them, I mean practicing just the shift until it's nice and clear, and then you can add all the notes around the shift. So I'd suggest doing that with each one of your shifts that sounds fuzzy. The tempo for this is quite fast, and so you really have to know the notes that are coming up very well. It's also what we call a perpetual motion etude, which means once the first note starts, you don't stop playing until the very end. So that can make for some boring music sometimes because there isn't much rhythm. There's just straight eighth notes. So how do we make music out of straight eighth notes? We make music by phrasing. We make music by adding in a few dynamics here and there. There's only one dynamic in this piece, and that's forte. But if you play the entire thing straight eighth notes, just forte, it would be very boring. So as I play it, you'll hear that I follow the pitch of the note. As the notes go up in pitch, I will usually crescendo a little bit. And as they go down in pitch, I'll sometimes decrescendo. That's not always the case. Sometimes I'll make some other dynamic choices that help me make music. But I challenge you to come up with your own idea of where the phrase should go and make your own music out of it. I'm actually going to play this excerpt for you guys under tempo. This is not the tempo that you should play it at the audition. I think at the audition you're supposed to play it at 126, and I'm going to play it around 100. The reason for that is I want you to be able to hear some of the intonation and hear how some of the phrasing I choose goes. And then you can speed it up yourself. But I remind you that you should make sure it's very solid sounding before you try speeding it up. Practice slowly first. Also, practice in chunks. Don't always start from the beginning. We always have to know the first line really well, but by the time you get to the end, how well do you really know the end of the piece? Not very well, because in our practice, we tend to start from the beginning and play straight through. That's not going to do us any good in practice. You want to pick a couple of lines at a time, maybe 4 measures at a time, and practice those until they're solid, and then move on. Maybe each day in your practice, you say, I'm going to practice these 3 lines of music. I'm going to make them sound really good at a slow tempo. The next day, you practice the next 3 lines of music, very slow until they sound nice. And over the course of the summer, you practice each line, and you get them a little bit faster and a little bit faster, and then you start putting the whole thing together and playing through. Okay, I think that's about it for this. Now I'll play it under tempo. couple other things while I was playing that you need to practice when you're learning this excerpt. And that is, the beginning of every note needs to have a crisp, clear sound. If you don't have a crisp, clear sound, then your playing starts to sound like you're slurring when you talk. Now, I would not be easy to understand if I was slurring when I spoke. So it's important that when you play, you don't sound like this. Let me give you an example of how not to do it, okay? You hear how the note is fuzzy? It's in tune, it's fine, but it just doesn't sound very good. The key to making this crisp, clear sound at the beginning of every note is the key to a lot of good sounds in the violin, and that is the third finger, the ring finger on your bow. If your third finger on the bow is curved over the side of the bow, you're gonna have a very nice, crisp control of the bow, and it'll sound like this. All right, that's gonna be very important when you get into an audition and they're gonna be listening for your sound.